If there was one thing that I think Coach Paterno was the king of, it was stories. Ask him about a game from 1960 or 1980 or a game that didn't even matter, or a practice from August of '58, he could tell you a story about it. It would have a lesson, it would have characters, it would have a plot that would lead you with learning something. I think it's kind of fitting then when I look at my experience with him as a story. It started, I guess, when I was still probably negative 20, negative 10 years old. My mom graduated here in late 1970s. And on her day of graduation, she was walking around campus, kind of soaking in the sights and sounds with her roommate. And she turned to her roommate, and said, "Man, I wish something would happen that could just punctuate with an exclamation point our Penn State experience." A few blocks later, on Park Avenue where they were walking, who comes moseying down the street but Joe Paterno? And he stopped and talked to them, shook their hands and said hello. And my mom considered that to be the most fitting exclamation point she could have asked for. I think it's funny too then, whenever I actually got to come here. I grew up a Penn State fan, coming to games. It's always my dream to play here, but I never was quite sure that I actually could. I came as a walk-on, still am a walk-on, and I wasn't one of those highly recruited kids where Joe would come to my house or speak to me or anything like that. I was somebody that he expected to show up for work, and to work hard, and to do everything that he's done all of his life. So when I came here, my first ever conversation with Joe Paterno consisted of 2 sentences. It was in August of 2008. And it's a very sunny day out on the practice field over by Lash Football Building. And he says, just walking through the lines where we're stretching, he says, looks at me. I wasn't even sure he was looking at me at first, but he said, looks at me and says, "Pretty nice day, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, Coach, it's beautiful." And he walked along. It was a fitting start from a humble man and a humble beginning that wrote the story that I will surely never forget. The middle part of that story, like any story, had its ups and downs. We butted heads a little bit, which is funny because I thought that of anybody in college football, of any coach, of any player even, who I would most relate to, it would be him. He was an English major at Brown, a real lover of books. I'm an English major here in print journalism, a lover of writing, a lover of books. And in a sport where usually the only books you read are ones that have plays, having that common person, that common bond, is really, truly special. So I found it even more fitting when the last 2 sentences I talked to him were after one of the practices that we had in the week or so leading up to the last game he coached against Illinois. A little before, he had evidently read an article from the Collegian that they wrote about me, and I was very humbled by. And in it, I talked about, and they wrote about the fact that I'm writing a story, trying to write my own book. And real quick, it's a retelling of the story of Jesus, probably one of the best stories of all time, except it's in modern day, and he plays basketball. It sounds funny, but I show you, it's cool. Just wait. But he comes up to me, this time he's on a golf cart, zips up there, and he looks at me, and again, I wasn't quite sure he was looking at me, because he could have talked to anybody out there, but he said, "Hey, I heard you're writing a book. I'd like to talk with you about it sometime, maybe during the bye week when we have some time." I said, "Sure, Coach, that sounds great." Now, as all of you know, the bye week came and went, and there wasn't really time for me to talk with Joe about my story. But I think it's fitting that the last game he coached had a storybook ending. Snow falling on the ground, last seconds of the game, and just inches away from defeat, Penn State pulls out the victory. It's also very, very fitting that on his birthday, came to my coach, quarterbacks coach, Jay Paterno, you guys know. And since I had never got to have that conversation with Joe on the bye week, I printed out chapter 1 of The Second Coming and gave it to him and said, if you could pass this on to Coach, that would be great. Now, I don't know if he ever read it, but from where he's at now, I think that somehow he'll get a copy of it when it comes out someday. But in reality, the one book that I know he prescribed to, and I do too, is probably the best book of all time, in my opinion. And in that book, they say that there's a time for everything. Time to live and time to die. A time to love, time to live, time for joy, time for sorrow, for pain, for triumph, all those things. The one thing, though, that there's always time for is love. I think that's what he wanted to live his life by. I think that's what he molded his career after. And I think he put all that love into Penn State. That book also says that love is patient, love is kind, love endures all things, and love never fails. If we all come together here, and if we live with that love that he lived with, this community, this school, this team, and everybody here will never fail. And so I look out here, and snow on the ground, it's cold, darkness overhead. And somewhere I'm thinking, man, this is pretty crappy. This is another January in State College. Who wants to be out here now? But halfway around the world, the sun is shining. And up beneath these clouds, it's bright as ever. And right here, if you look out where I'm looking from, you can see pockets of light shining everywhere. And if you look with the right kind of vision, you'll see not just pockets of light, but a whole vast scene of light. Because Joe Paterno, with the light that he was blessed with, has blessed each and every one of us in our own special way. And if we can all live with that light, if we can all keep that going, the love that he had for this place, the love that he had for these people, and the love that he had for this world will be everlasting. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Next, we have Matt McGloin.